We are learning more tonight about the woman who was killed while she was pushed in front of a subway train in Times Square.
Diligent businesswoman and a dedicated volunteer. 40-year-old Michelle Go was killed Saturday.
We're learning more about the woman killed this weekend in the attack and the effort by the community to honor her memory.
Today marks 1 month since another Asian American woman was killed at random in Manhattan. Michelle Go was pushed in front of an oncoming subway train.
I know we are all heartbroken that Michelle's life was cut so short. Michelle, we will miss you deeply, but know that you will always be in our hearts and memories.
New York City, the pulse of America, in which millions of humans rush via their day-by-day lives, caught up in the in-no-way-ending tempo of the urban jungle. The metropolis has continually had a reputation for its electricity, its possibilities, and its demanding situations. But alongside its towering skyscrapers and colorful streets, there exists an undercurrent of fear. Every day, human beings take the subway, a transportation machine that serves because the town's lifeline. It is meant to be secure. It is meant to be reliable. Yet for some, it has ended up a place of surprising chance, wherein violence can strike without caution. Among the numerous commuters who stepped onto the subway platform that fateful morning changed into Michelle Alyssa Go, an ambitious, kind-hearted female who had labored hard to construct a success existence. Like many New Yorkers, she became honestly looking to get to her destination, unaware that she turned into approximately to grow to be the sufferer of a mindless, brutal, and completely random act of violence, an attack that would surprise the entire nation and reignite debates approximately mental health, public safety, and justice in America. To the sector, Michelle Go may additionally have come to be called a sufferer. However, to folks who knew her, she changed into a lot greater than that. Born in 1981, Michelle grew up in Fremont, California, in a loving circle of relatives that advocated her to chase her desires. A super pupil, she earned a degree in economics from UCLA, setting the inspiration for a shiny future. She later pursued an MBA from the NYU Stern School of Business, a prestigious fulfillment that opened doorways to a thriving career in finance and consulting. Professionally, Michelle changed into a senior supervisor at Deloitte, wherein she labored diligently, gaining the respect and admiration of her colleagues. But her lifestyles wasn't just about professional achievement. She had a deep experience of compassion, dedicating endless hours to volunteering for charitable businesses. She helped the homeless, mentored those in need, and believed in creating a distinction. Ironically, the very network she worked so difficult to uplift became the only that ultimately didn't shield her. January 15, 2022. It became a Saturday morning, a time whilst maximum human beings are both nevertheless waking up or heading out to revel in their weekend. For Michelle, it was simply some other day inside the bustling metropolis she had called home for years. She made her manner to the Times Square 42nd Street subway station, one of the busiest within the city. People had been coming and going, immersed in their own worlds, a few checking their telephones, others taking note of tune, misplaced an idea, unaware of the threat lurking nearby. As Michelle stood on the platform, expecting your train, a person was watching her. His call turned into Simon Marshall, a 61-year vintage homeless man with a deeply bothered beyond. He had no connection to Michelle. He had no reason to goal her. But as the educate approached, he abruptly rushed toward her, shoved her violently from at the back of, and sent her crashing onto the tracks. It all took place in a matter of seconds. The crowd froze in horror because the teach entered the station. Some screamed, some included their mouths, unable to trust what that they had simply witnessed. And in those final, heartbreaking moments, Michelle had no time to react, no time to get away. The teach struck her immediately, taking her life in a brutal, mindless act of violence. As the shock settled over the subway station, Simon Marshall did not run. Unlike most criminals who attack and flee, he walked away flippantly, displaying no signs and symptoms of regret. Within minutes, he became apprehended via the police, who located him a few blocks away. And in a chilling confession, he admitted to the whole lot. "Yes, I did it, because I'm God." His phrases sent a wave of disbelief and horror through the investigators. Here turned into a man who had simply taken in harmless lifestyles, and he confirmed no guilt, no worry, only a twisted feel of self-righteousness. So who became Simon Marshall, and how did he attain this point? Simon Marshall was no stranger to regulation enforcement. His crook file returned many years, filled with attacks, robberies, and disturbances. One of his most extreme offenses passed off in 1998 whilst he robbed a taxi driving force at gunpoint, a criminal offense that landed him in prison for 20 years. But even after his launch, his lifestyles continued on a downward spiral. Diagnosed with schizophrenia, Marshall suffered from excessive mental infection, often having delusions and violent outbursts. His circle of relatives had long pleaded for assist, insisting that he needed medical treatment. But time and time once more, he became either disregarded or given transient care earlier than being released back onto the streets. New York City, like many major urban regions, has struggled for years with mental fitness crises, some of the homeless populace. Many people tormented by extreme psychiatric disorders do no longer receive the long-term care they need, as an alternative being left to wander the streets, untreated and unpredictable. Simon Marshall turned into one in every of them, and because of this failure of the machine, and harmless girl paid the closing price. Michelle Go's homicide became no longer an isolated incident. In reality, subway violence had been growing at an alarming rate in New York City. In 2021 alone, there were 488 legal attacks in subway stations, a 25% growth as compared to the previous year. Commuters had all started feeling hazardous, with many expressing fears about random attacks, robberies, and violent encounters. In several cases, these assaults had been unprovoked. Victims were really in the incorrect area at the wrong time. Some were stabbed, a few were punched, and others, like Michelle, have been pushed onto the tracks. The worry became real, and it was growing. News of Michelle's loss of life unfolds swiftly, igniting a wave of shock and sorrow across the state. Vigils were held in her honor, with candles, flora, and heartfelt messages left in tribute. Friends, family, or even strangers accrued to mourn her loss, remembering her now not just as a sufferer, but as a type, hardworking, and beneficent girl who had so much extra to present. Her murder additionally sparked renewed requires movement. New York officials pledged to boom police presence in subway stations and enforce mental health reforms. But many wondered whether these measures had been too little, too overdue. Michelle Go ought to nevertheless be alive today, and yet the tragic reality is that her dying turned into preventable. If Simon Marshall had received the mental fitness remedy he desperately wished, if there had been better safety measures in subway stations, if the machine had not failed both the attacker and the sufferer, Michelle may nonetheless be right here. Her murder forces us to ask some hard, uncomfortable questions. How can we make sure that humans stricken by intense mental illness get hold of proper care? Should there be stricter safety features on subway platforms to save you attacks? What adjustments want to occur to make public areas honestly secure for anyone? Even after Michelle's tragic dying, the feel of worry in New York City's subway gadget did not fade. In truth, it grew stronger. Commuters began looking over their shoulders, status further back from the platform aspect, and wondering whether or not the subway changed into nevertheless a secure way to travel. Parents warned their kids to be extra cautious, and workplace people debated whether or not they should find alternative transportation. The fact became grim. Michelle was no longer the primary victim of such an assault, and she or he would not be the remaining. Authorities replied via deploying more cops to subway stations, increasing surveillance, and introducing measures to keep commuters safe. But have been those solutions absolutely enough? The deeper problem remained unsolved: the developing quantity of untreated mentally sick people dwelling at the streets, left at risk of their personal internal demons, and, in a few cases, posing a threat to others. Until the gadget addressed this disaster at its root, public protection would remain a situation, and extra harmless lives could be at hazard. Michelle Go's homicide is extra than just a tragic story. It's miles a call to action. It highlights the urgent want for mental fitness reforms, stricter security measures in public areas, and a criminal gadget that prioritizes both prevention and protection. Random acts of violence ought to not emerge as an ordinary part of city existence, and no innocent individual have to need to stay and worry at the same time as simply commuting to paintings. As we consider Michelle, we ought to also call for exchange. Laws need to be reevaluated to make certain that mentally unwell individuals receive the care they want earlier than they turn out to be a hazard to themselves or others. Subway stations have to enforce physical limitations on structures, like those used in different foremost cities, to save people from being pushed onto the tracks. And most importantly, we as a society need to refuse to just accept senseless violence as an inevitable part of day-by-day existence. Only with the aid of acknowledging those troubles and working closer to actual answers are we able to without a doubt honor Michelle's memory and save you every other tragedy like this from occurring again. Michelle's dying have to now not be useless. It should serve as a be careful call for towns across the state. A reminder that public safety, mental fitness care, and crime prevention cannot be neglected. Now, we turn to you. What do you observe desires to alternate? Should there be higher subway protection? Should intellectual health care be prioritized? How can we stop tragedies like this from occurring once more? Let us understand your mind, and bear in mind, in a world in which chance can strike suddenly, staying conscious may want to sooner or later shop your existence.